And gets sucked to death in the making. It's called Muesli. Ready? Honestly turned into a storm right now. Oh, the camera. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or for those that are new here, hello, my name is Alicia. So we have currently been doing a calf rearing series here on my YouTube channel, and today we're going to be doing episode 5, which is all about our feeding system. Me and my husband Jaden live here in beautiful New Zealand on our very own 10-acre property where we rear calves in both autumn and spring. So at the moment we have 42 calves. Now remember, obviously all calf rearers are different, everyone has different opinions and things like that, but for my calf rearing series, just remember it's just my personal experience. So today we're going to be talking about our feeding systems, what we feed our calves, how much we feed them, when we feed them, how we feed them, everything along those lines. So I hope you enjoy this video and let's get right into it. Alright, so let's start off from the beginning. So obviously we buy our calves in from sale yards and other farms, so we're really relying on the farmers before us that they've given the calves that we buy adequate colostrum for the first 4 days. So colostrum is vital for the calves to get a really good head start on life, and also it really helps build up their immune system. So when we first get our calves home, we actually feed them electrolytes. This reduces the stress on the calf when you're changing its diet, because obviously the calves haven't had milk powder before, they've had a long stressful day at the yard, so the last thing you want to do is be changing their diet as soon as you bring them home, because this can lead to nutritional scours. So I have talked a lot more about this in my episode 3, so definitely go and check that out if you want to learn a little bit more about why we give them electrolytes when we get them home. Alright, so we feed our calves twice a day for the first 3 weeks, and then they go outside and are put on once a day. So there is so many different opinions about this. I know a lot of farms feed their calves twice a day right through. I also know a lot of farms that feed once a day right through. So I mean, it's really your decision what you choose to do at the end of the day. But the reason that we put our calves on twice a day to begin with is because they're only little babies, they're really delicate, and I feel like it stresses them a lot if you're only feeding them once a day, because obviously they're used to coming off mum, feeding whenever they like, little bits throughout the day. So I think it's just quite hard on them when you're only giving them one big feed only once a day. They're also not eating any meal and things like that, so it's harder for them to keep full throughout the day. Good morning, little babies. Good morning, babies. Now the reason that we switched to once a day is obviously it's less labour intensive, you don't have to feed your calves twice a day, but also it actually really helps with rumen development. Because the calves are hungry in the afternoon, it kind of forces them to start trying to eat their meal, nibbling on their hay, which is crucial to developing their rumen, and then obviously that leads to weaning them off milk. Our calves get 2 to 2.5 litres morning and night when they're on twice a day feeding, and then when they go outside they get about 4 litres. So a big thing is we feed our calves warm milk. We don't want to feed our calves cold milk because they end up using all the energy to try and keep warm and heat up that milk rather than using their energy on growing. Which at the end of the day, that's what we want them to do, grow, so we can wean them off when they hit that 100 kg mark. Also, it's a real feel-good thing when it's a freezing frosty cold morning and you're feeding your calves a nice hot milkshake. Yeah, you just feel a lot better and they really seem to enjoy it. Younger calves also are quite fussy and tend to not actually drink the milk when it's cold. So yeah, I definitely recommend warm milk if you can. We feed our calves both milk powder and whole milk, but it all comes down to the availability of the whole milk. It's autumn now, so it's not as available as it would be in spring. We did actually manage to get some a few weeks ago, but now we've just run out, so our calves are getting fed on fully milk powder. So the reason we want to feed them whole milk, it is just way cheaper, ridiculously cheaper to feed calves whole milk rather than milk powder. It's around 15 cents a litre for whole milk, and then when you're feeding powder, we worked it out and it's like $1 a litre. So that is yeah, that's a ridiculous amount cheaper to feed them whole milk. If the whole milk is available, we pick it up in 1,000 litre pods, and then when we get home we transfer it into a vat like this one behind me. So it sucks because we don't have 3-phase here, so I actually bought this vat behind me not even thinking to ask if it was 3-phase or normal power, because I really wanted a chilled vat. However, I got it home and husband's like, we don't have 3-phase here. So once we get our milk home, we put it in our vat and then it is not chilled. We've got to make sure that it's chilled when we first buy it. So you get 10 days out of it, which is actually pretty good because we normally use easy 1,000 litres in 10 days. So it kind of isn't too bad that we don't have a chiller. So yeah, if you don't have 3-phase, which a lot of lifestyle properties, like small blocks probably won't have 3-phase, then yeah, you can definitely still get whole milk and not chill it, but just make sure that it's chilled when you first get it, and then because it's such a big volume of milk, it actually just keeps itself cold, and yeah, lasts for around 10 days. So I will do a separate video when it comes to milk powders and whole milks, because there's a lot of topics to discuss when it comes to which ones you should choose. The basics of it is, just because whole milk is cheaper doesn't necessarily mean it's the better option. Milk powders have different additives in them, such as decox powder to prevent coccidiosis. You've probably also seen lots of different kinds of milk powder, cheaper ones, more expensive ones, because you've pretty much got casein based and whey based powders. So yeah, I'll do another episode, talk a little bit more about those. But for the basics of this video, we feed our calves the premium casein based powder for the first 6 weeks, and then after 6 weeks we put them onto the whey powder. But yeah, I will talk a bit more about that in another episode, why we switch and things like that. The milk powder we're using this year is Milligan's. I usually actually use Naiwi, but Farmlands gave us a good deal on this stuff, so yeah, we went with Milligan's this year. So at the moment we don't have any whole milk, so we are just feeding our calves full milk powder. So at the moment it isn't working that easily because we are in the process of building a big calf shed. So at the moment we're mixing up in our laundry, using our hot water from our house, mixing it up in buckets, and we've got to do a long as walk down the driveway to feed the calves in the paddock. Alright everybody, welcome to the mixing room. Better known as the laundry, but is an absolute mess at the moment. So we store all our milk powder in here in the chest freezer. Luckily our whole house actually is in the process of major renovations. We bought this property a little bit run down, including the house, which is 1970s. So I'm not worried too much that this laundry is an absolute pigsty. We actually even smashed the window the other day. Haven't bothered fixing it yet because we are redesigning kind of like the whole house plan. So yeah, for now it is my calf milk mixing room. We get our hot water from our laundry tap, which is connected to our house hot water cylinder. I'm literally using a plant pot for my measurer. That's how definitely temporary things are at the moment. So we do 6 big scoops in each bucket. So you can see how you end up using a lot of milk powder. And also whole milk, when we have it, is just easier. Obviously you don't have to muck around mixing it. You can just tip it straight into the bucket. So yeah, it's way quicker feeding than whole milk as well. But never mind. And then we're just going to mix. I use this real good whisk that you can buy from Farmlands. Definitely makes it a lot quicker to mix the powder. I should add here, definitely use hot water when you're trying to mix milk powder. It is like really hard to mix milk powder in cold water. It just doesn't mix that great. So normally we would put calves on the trailer feeder once they get out the paddock, but because this year's a bit of a mess all over the place because of our new shed not being built, we've had to use this lean-to behind me, which only houses about 20-25 calves. So normally we'd probably get a big group of 50, feed them all at once, keep them in the same group, put them outside and go on the trailer feeder all together. But because this year we've done 2 group 20, or we've got 19 outside and 23 in there, we're just going to wait until these calves in the shed are old enough so then we can mix them with the calves outside. So I normally don't like mixing age groups, so we're really just got to see how this goes. We've just really got to make sure that the calves are really good drinkers before they can join the other calves out in the paddock. So the reason I don't use the trailer feeder out in the paddock now for the 19 calves is because we've tried this in the past. It doesn't really work when you've got a low volume of milk in those trailer feeders, I feel, because by the time you've turned the taps on and all the milk's emptied out of the holding tank, you haven't even had time to wind up the level to give the calves that are at the back of the feeder any milk. So yeah, it becomes really stressful, the calves don't get fed. So yeah, we this year are doing it a bit different. We're feeding the 19 calves in the paddock on fence hung feeders as well as the calves in the shed. It's really important that we make sure that they drink their whole feed, so we've got to battle the calves away from the calves that are still drinking, because they're only on once a day now. So yeah, we're just going to make sure they get that full feed because it's got to last them till the morning. Obviously it's going to be great once the calf shed's built because we can do all 50 calves at once, they can all be together on the trailer feeder and it will be much simpler. But it's actually real good that I can show you how we're doing things at the moment, because this is probably how most people on a small block would rear your calves. You don't need a fancy shed to rear calves, and I think people forget that. I mean, this is just an old lean-to off this barn, which works great. I talked a bit about what you kind of need when you're setting up a calf shed on my first episode, so check that out. But pretty much you just need somewhere warm and dry for your calves. Apart from feeding our calves milk, we also feed them meal. End of the day, meal is a lot cheaper to feed your calves than milk, and then of course grass is even cheaper again. So that's the aim of us calf rearers. We want to get them off milk and onto meal and eventually onto grass as quick as possible. So if we can develop the rumen early, that is a win. So when we first get our calves in the shed, we give them some muesli. That's right, it's called muesli, not muesli. I used to go to the shop and I was like, can I please have some muesli for my calves? And they're like, what, muesli? And I thought they were joking, but they weren't. It's truly called muesli. So the reason we give our babies muesli is because there's lots of yummy molasses on it. They like the taste of it. It's really palatable. We even actually try and help encourage them to eat it, so when they're finished their milk and they're sucking on your fingers, I'll sometimes grab a little bit of the muesli and put it in their mouths just to encourage them to eat some of it. Once the calves go outside of the paddock when they're about 3 weeks old, we switch to protein pellets, 20% protein pellets, which they get ad lib. So we fill up these big green feeders with a bag each. So now both meal feeders have plenty of meal in them for the calves to eat. They just get access to that meal 24/7. And then when they're around 8 weeks old, give or take, we switch to 16% protein pellets. That's just so they don't rely fully on the pellets and then it really starts getting them into eating that grass, because once you wean your calves you obviously want them to be weaned completely onto grass only. Is this not the cutest little Cheryl you've ever seen? So the end result is that we're wanting our calves to be eating 2 kgs of meal a day before we wean them off the milk, which I'll talk about really soon. I just thought I'd add, when you're selecting a meal, make sure it's got a coccidiostat in it. I made the mistake a few years ago thinking that cheap was the best thing to do, but no, I found out later after my calves all had coccidiosis, they were shedding bloody scours, it was an absolute mess, that the meal that I purchased didn't have a coccidiostat in it. So yeah, definitely remember, cheap is not best, get a really good meal for them. It will definitely save you in the long run. You'll see it says with a coccidiostat, which is really important. So apart from feeding them meal, we also feed them a product called Opticaff. This helps slow the passing of milk through the calf system and it really helps to reduce scours. So this is what the Opticaff bag looks like. I'll try and find a picture off the internet and put it in here. Some people actually call this product calf cocaine because the calves are obsessed with it. They definitely start licking it and eating it from day one. It's actually really funny because sometimes I'm wondering why the calves look a bit weird, but it's because they've licked and eaten so much of it and it gets all stuck like in there, and it's like this big thick paste, and they like can barely like move their mouths. We also make sure our calves have access to hay 24/7. Hay is just really good fibre, bungs them up, helps them with scours. We also give them apple cider vinegar in their water, which helps their gut, and we also give them a salt lick. Alright, the last topic we're going to be talking about is obviously weaning our calves, because that is what we're striving to move towards. So we wean our calves at about 12 weeks old or 100 kgs. So how we wean them is pretty much we wean them over a series of a few days. Their first feed obviously they're getting the 4 litres, then the next day they'll get 3, next day 2 and then 1. So I think it's really important that you slowly wean them off the milk so it's not like a big shock to the system. Bear in mind when you are weaning calves they will moo and moo and moo and moo all night long. Normally only for like 2 or 3 days, so don't worry. Yeah, you can get a few sleepless nights, so definitely make sure when you are in the process of weaning your calves to put them in a paddock a long way away from your house. So we don't have a large amount of land, we only have 10 acres. Definitely do not have enough grass for 42 calves. So as soon as they're really getting into that grass, they need to go. So as soon as we wean them off on that 1 litre, the next day we would have arranged for a transport truck to pick them up, or we will go and deliver them. Sometimes there is the odd case that I will wean them a little bit earlier. Obviously some of them reach 100 kgs earlier than others. Some reach it at 10 weeks so they can go earlier. It's basically off weight rather than age, because some of the calves when we first get them into the shed are actually a lot older than 4 days old. I actually looked at the NATE records of the calves that we just got, and some of them in there are already 4 weeks old. So yeah, we definitely go off more the weight rather than the age. To help with the weaning process, I also sometimes tell my buyers to just keep feeding the calves meal for an extra week or two, just to help with that transition. We normally sell to lifestylers, so they actually don't normally mind buying a $20 bag of meal and feeding the calves for an extra week, because it also keeps their calves nice and friendly as well. This weather is insane. It's starting to rain now. You've probably seen all 4 seasons throughout this video. Raining, cloudy, sunny. It's all over the place today. Let's wrap up this video before it starts to pour. So I hope you guys learned a little bit more about feeding systems. I'll just go over what we talked about. So when we first bring the calves home, we like to feed them electrolytes. We feed our calves twice a day for the first 3 weeks, and then we put them outside and they go on to once a day. We feed our calves a mix of whole milk and milk powder. We feed them 2 to 2.5 litres when they're on twice a day, and then they go on to 4 litres once a day. They start off on compartment feeders and then they move to a trailer feeder when we put them outside. We also feed our calves meal, muesli to begin with, then grow up 20%, then grow up 16%. Also giving them access to hay, salt licks, Opticaff, and then we wean our calves at 12 weeks old or 100 kgs, but we more tend to go off the weight rather than the age. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It gives you a bit of an insight to what we're doing here with our calves. Definitely subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It's honestly turned into a storm right now. I hope to see you guys in future episodes. Catch you later. Bye. Camera. Oh my god. It's gonna pour. Oh, that was good timing. That was bloody good timing.